Good morning, my beautiful babes and babes. I am your resident active advocate. And look at this! Look at this! I'm wearing a springy blouse. And I'm not freezing. For the first time in 5 months. Hello, Canada. I hate you. I hate your weather. Yeah. Anyway, today I would like to embark with you upon the consummation of a new series of videos, and I would like to talk to you about disability as portrayed in Disney's full-length animated features. We're going all the way back to the beginning here with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. This might seem like a really obvious choice, and it is, but maybe not for the reasons you think. So, dwarfism is defined as a person who is fully grown, but is, I believe it's no taller than 4'5". So if you are taller than 4'5", or maybe 4'6", and that's in, I believe that's in the imperial system, by the way. So I don't know what that would be in meters. Sorry for all of you who speak metric. Technically, I do speak metric because this is Canada, but for medical reasons, I don't know why we stuck to imperial for that, but we did. So I know what a foot is. I don't really know what a meter is when it comes to measuring a human, but anyway. Dwarfism is defined as someone who is, I can't remember, it's either 4'5" or 4'6" when they are fully grown, or lower than that. So Snow White is, canonically, she's among the youngest of the Disney princesses. I do believe that she's only about 13 years old when the movie takes place. And you probably already all know the plot of this movie. You probably already know the plot of almost every movie I'm going to be talking about. But Snow White stumbles across a house that is inhabited by 7 dwarfs who all have very non-human names, shall we say. Now, in various mythologies from around the world, dwarves are non-human creatures, okay? Like, mythologically speaking, they belong to their own species, but they would be considered, in the mythological sense, humanoid. They're like humans. So think dwarves, fairies, centaurs, fauns, all the mythical creatures that we get out of Greece and out of the Norse mythologies, but they're like humans, but they're not humans. So that's one aspect that I want to bring up here. Dwarves, in the sense as provided by this movie, are human, but barely. And that could also be, if you interpret it this way, a commentary on disability, how with disability there is something lacking, quotation marks around that, lacking. But with the dwarves, you see Doc, the intelligent one, Happy, the joyful one, Sleepy, Sneezy, Grumpy, oh my goodness, Bashful, there we go. And then the one with whom I take most issue is, quote, Dopey. I'm not very fond of that name, and I will go into that. But when Snow White first arrives at their house, she sees that the place is basically torn apart. There's no natural light coming in. The kitchen's a wreck. You know, the living room's a wreck. The whole house is a wreck. And while this was the role prescribed to women, happy International Women's Day, by the way, while this was the role ascribed to women back in the 1930s, the first thing she thinks of is, oh, they'll let me stay if I keep house for them. But judging by the size of their furniture, she believes them all to be children. When they get home and find that she's cleaned the house, they don't know exactly what's going on. They've never lived in a functioning household. You can tell by their behavior and by their commentary on what she's done that they've never lived in what would be considered a functioning household. This, to me, is commentary on disability, that we are not capable of taking care of ourselves. And it is also a mark of infantilization, in that the first thing she believes, now mind you, this is without context, to be fair to her, the first thing she believes is that they are all children. But even after she meets them all and sees that they are men, all of them much older than her, except maybe for Dopey, but we'll get to that again, she still infantilizes them. She treats them most often like children, and, gives them a kiss goodbye before they go to work, and makes their meals for them and keeps the house clean for them. And, there's that rather interesting scene, and I like it, okay? I'm not saying that I don't appreciate the childhood innocence here. And this is very nostalgic for me, as it would be for quite a lot of my audience if you were raised in the West. There's that scene where she sends them off to bathe, to wash their faces and their hands before supper, and it's heavily implied that they have not washed themselves, not exactly ever, but for a very, very long time. So the infantilization factor coming in here is that even their own bodies they cannot take care of, let alone their own houses. Or, well, house. They all live in the same house. But the interesting thing, too, is that Disney mixes this with the mythological element of dwarves being miners and builders and being at one with the earth, shall we say, and able to extract the earth's resources. So it's not like they can't fend for themselves, but when it comes to doing stereotypically, quote, human things, they can't. They can't keep clean, even. So Snow White, while she's treated as an honored guest, especially by Doc, who, as I say, is the most intelligent of the seven, and is their at least nominal leader, while she is treated as an honored guest by them, she is also treated as both a pet and a mother figure. The whole idea is that it almost feels like the dwarves are playing pretend with her. Don't worry, my dear, we will protect you. We know that there is evil out there in the world, but it's coming for you, not for us. So let it fall upon us to protect you. So in that sense, they are being what we would consider, quote, real men. They are being gentlemen. They are guarding her from the evils that exist along her path of life. At the same time, though, as I say, she sings pretty songs to them. She cleans their house. She takes care of them as though they were her children. This is especially applicable to Dopey, and this is the case that I take most issue with. Dopey is implied to be neuroatypical. It is implied that he may have an intellectual disability, and he does not speak throughout, I think it's the entire film. I don't know if you ever hear a single coherent word come out of his mouth. You hear him making sounds, but when Snow White asks, can't he speak? I believe it's Doc, or maybe it's Happy, who says, we don't know, he's never tried. So in that vein, I would assume, though it's both in the real world, it is both irresponsible and irrational to, quote, diagnose from a distance. You shouldn't try and do that if you're not a professional. This is a movie character, however, so I'm going to try and do that even though I'm not a professional. The fact that he has never even attempted to speak does sort of line up with the assumption that he could be neuroatypical. That and the fact that he acts as a sort of pet to Snow White. He infantilizes himself. He's always tugging on her sleeve and demanding her attention, and very much like physically fond of her. Mommy, give me hugs, give me kisses, give me love. And that could be, from another vantage, if he were understood to be a, quote, fully functional adult male. It could be understood as him trying to form a loving physical relationship with this woman, but that is not at all the movie's interpretation of this character. He is portrayed as being extraordinarily childlike, much, much more than the other 6 dwarves. We're not told of the nature of their relationship, whether they're all brothers, But Dopey is definitely the youngest of the seven. You can tell he is. I mean, he has very boyish, very almost infantile features as compared to the rest of them. He has no beard. He has bigger eyes than the rest of them do. And he always has this giant smile on his face. So he is both physically and intellectually the baby of the group, and Snow White treats him as such. However, towards the end of the movie, he is displayed as being just as capable of deep grief as the rest of them are when Snow White is laying sleeping in her coffin. That, by the way, they all build for her, and there's the mythological usefulness of dwarves coming in again. They are craftsmen. They know what to do with the earth and how to make it into useful resources. They make her a coffin, and the text on the screen says it's made of glass and of gold. How long does it take for them to make this thing for her, right? But we're not really supposed to consider that element of the story. The thing is, though, Dopey is portrayed, as I say, as being fully capable of strong grief, but the way in which he expresses it is quite different from the rest of the dwarves. They're sobbing, yes, but he's broken, shall we say. He is completely at a loss of what to do. And you can see that by his facial expression, by his body language, everything. He, I believe, does not even approach the coffin, does not even try to. Well, the others are laying flowers around it and all that. He keeps vigil off to the side because his grief is so deep and so profound that he can't even approach death, which again I believe is another infantilizing element of his character. He's too young, intellectually at least, to understand death. We never hear how old any of these dwarves are, but the fact that at least 6 of them are portrayed as old men, you might assume that Dopey is around the same age, but he certainly doesn't act that way, and he's certainly not treated that way. The rest of the group also treat him as a kind of pet. And that's the greatest issue I take with this story in terms of its portrayal of disability. Not only are these 7 men being treated like children, but even within the group, there is self-infantilization, there is infantilization by the other 6. It's not just Snow White doing this to Dopey either. And the name Dopey implies he is, forgive me, slur coming up, that he is, quote, slow. Back in the day, he would have been called, quote, slow, or by the R word, which I'm not going to use because I really don't like that word. So the portrayal of disability in this movie is not particularly favorable, and you see this not only in the earlier Disney movies, but you see this as well in some of the myths and stories from which they are taken. Disability throughout history, as I've mentioned before in these series, is not a thing that is well or widely understood, but it's a thing that we're starting to be able to grasp more and more as people are allowed more and more room to express who they are and to be seen by society, not only as actual worthy individuals, but just to be seen at all. Because prior to this, we would have been, quote, put away, we would have been institutionalized. Shove it off into the corner so that you don't have to look at it, so that you don't have to interact with it, because everyone is scared of it. And for reference, please go back and watch my video entitled The Fear of Disability, because I talk about physical disability in that one, but this also applies to intellectual disability. More so to intellectual, because it's the mind trying to understand the mind. And that's much harder to do because the mind is a much more complicated network than the body. With the body, supposedly, everyone, quote everyone, okay, has 2 hands, 2 arms, 2 legs, a face, a whole bunch of features that are, quote, supposed to be there. With the mind, though, it's much more complicated because we have yet ever to encounter 2 minds that are exactly alike. Not even with identical twins who are raised in the same household is the mind exactly alike. And they're from the same pool of DNA. right? They split off from the same egg. So the portrayal of neuroatypicality, especially in this movie, is not favorable and doesn't do anyone actually living in that time period with disabilities. It doesn't do them any favors. And I love, love, love that the Disney narrative of disability progresses, and it does. But we're going to take a while to get there, because that is the progression that started in the 1930s and is going on even now. So that is my video on Snow White. Tomorrow I will be talking about Pinocchio, which is a very interesting story when it comes to the portrayal of disability. And yes, it is there. Don't write it off just because you can't recognize it yet. I'll show it to you. All right. I really look forward to making it this full series. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, not only for me, but for anyone watching. If you have thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, snide remarks, please leave them down below. And I will get back to you lovelies tomorrow. All right. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Mwah! Love you!